Hello everybody, this is Mark Baber from Sony and we're going live in about 3 minutes with Wex on their YouTube live channel. So those of you that join us, I think there's 20 watching now, which is great. So if you've got any questions for John Edwards of Naive Studios, he's going to be live with me in just over 3 minutes. So please get them ready. We've got some pre-set questions that we've had in earlier through Wex, so we've got enough to get through. So sit back, get yourself a cup of tea quickly, a cup of coffee, whatever you're drinking, and we'll be with you in just over 2 minutes. Hello everybody, my name is Mark Baber and I work for Sony and I'm the Technical Marketing Manager here in the UK and Ireland for our photo channel. Basically that means we're working with our UK retailers across the UK and Ireland to bring you some live webinars, as you can see here with Wex. Now before COVID we were bringing a lot of physical events to the market, and obviously that's changed, so I am in my shed. This is all real. It's a real TV screen and a backdrop here, so no green screen here. But we're going to be talking today about the A7S III and with filmmaker, director of photography at Naive Studios, Jon Edwards. So I'm going to bring Jon in live in a second. We're going to find out first-hand experience about Jon's experience of getting the camera. He's just managed to get the camera in the last few weeks. Obviously he's bought it himself, so he's here talking about his work with the camera out in the field. For those of you that are watching or joining a bit later, this webinar will be recorded and live into the YouTube channel for Facebook as well, so you can watch it at your own leisure. But please stay with us to the end, because not only it's a really good webinar with an insight from a filmmaker out in the industry at the moment, we're also going to give you a URL link, so a website that you can register your details with, and we will be able to give you money off on top of existing offers, for example, cashback that's out in the market. Okay, so I have said earlier, if you've got any questions, please let us know. I'm just looking at the room now, so we've got about 30 people joining us, so I'm just going to look at my screen. So when I get comments through, they will come up on my comments section, so give us a chance for this to come back to you. If we do miss you, we've got a good relationship with Wex, so we'll be more than happy to pick up with you at a later stage as well. So please, there's a great opportunity to talk to an industry working filmmaker with his work on the A7S Mark III. Okay, before we find out about Jon's experience, let's have a look at Naive Studios and what they're all about.
Typically portrayed as having been raised by wolves.
The number you have reached is not in service. Try your call again.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Naive.
So we're just about to bring Jon in, so say hi to Jon Edwards. Hi, Jon.
Hi, Mark. Pleasure to be here. Thank you very much.
Pleasure, mate. Thank you very much. And for those of you watching, there is just a slight delay in questioning through questions. So I'll give, obviously, Jon a bit of time to answer the question as well. But lovely. Look, thanks very much for joining us, Jon. I know you've had some great fun with the A7S III. I know you only just got your hands on it as well, so that's really good news. But before we go into that, could you just tell the audience that are watching on the Wex YouTube channel a little bit about yourself, how you got into filmmaking, Naive Studios, etc., and just share your journey with who's watching today?
Yeah, of course. So initially I went to university and I studied design and art direction, which was good. And I did a little bit of photography and a little bit of film work throughout. But it was always graphic design that I felt was kind of the thing that I would go into as a job. And especially I was at uni in Manchester, so for the Northwest, it just seemed at the time, you know, this was over 10 years ago, like a more realistic option, because I had my parents breathing down my neck about doing arts, rather than something with a pension at the end of it and all the rest of it. So the safe route I felt at the time was graphics, because I did some work placements, I had some friends working within that, and I fell into that for a good almost like a 10-year period out of university, straight out of uni, really, up until like a senior level. And I worked for the NHS, I worked for a timber company, I did some freelance jobs on the side for like Red Bull and a BMX magazine I loved and stuff. So I did some stuff that I really liked, but I just felt really on the day-to-day I was ended up conveying a lot of people's bad ideas on briefs. You know, it kind of ended up working commercially like that within kind of in-house. So I guess from that I was still shooting landscape photography as a hobby a little bit, and then I'd always been interested in film and shot bikes with film work, and then I shot a little video for a new skate park in our town, and I put that into the Sony Pro Production Awards, which again at the time it was just the camera was like some kind of cheap Nikon DSLR, I guess, you know, when that first kind of kicked off with the DSLRs doing more video stuff and the quality being a little bit better, and you know, interchangeable lenses and stuff. I put that into Sony and strangely like won the commercial sector. So off Sony, they supplied me an FS 700 at the time, the first like slow-mo camera really for like a reasonable prosumer price, I guess, for cine grade.
John, sorry to
Yeah.
interrupt. How long ago was that?
So that was, I think I won the award in 2013.
Okay, great.
Yeah, because I think I think those awards ran another 2 years or so after that. But yeah, so and then Sony were amazing. I had really good support. They sent me down to Pinewood. I learned color grading and shooting log, and really getting the most out of that camera, I guess, and all the rest of it, even lighting and stuff. And then at that point, I kind of decided, oh, I could maybe do this as a job. Like if I push for more work and I start doing little bits on the side, weddings, hotels, restaurants. People started wanting stuff, and Instagram was growing at the time. So it just built from there, really. So I started doing some restaurants and hotels, a couple of weddings. I didn't really like the weddings. I felt they were quite like stressful, and everything was one take. Where I liked all the kind of glossy commercial work, where it was kind of people left you to your own devices as long as they were happy with the edit. So I guess that was the other part of escaping graphic design in a way. I was kind of making what I wanted to showcase rather than what someone else was visualizing. So it was kind of always, it was nice when it went above the client's expectation, I guess, that they'd sign it off because they couldn't imagine what you were going to do for them. And then, yeah, so from there, I bought an A6000, I think, a Sony.
Yeah.
A smaller camera as a B cam, so I could start steady camming at the time of like steady cams and the smaller, cheaper rigs coming out. And then off the back of that, when the Alpha range started growing, the A7S II, and which else did I have? I had an A7 II as well. Obviously, the S being the more video-based camera with the low light. So then I flipped the FS 700. I sold that whilst it was still worth a decent amount of money, and I invested in two Alphas, which I think a lot of people at the time thought I was crazy. And I was a bit upset to lose the Cine camera, because I had this big, impressive, bulky camera to take out. But I was still one-man banding at the time completely, so it was nicer to go to smaller gear, having two cameras for interviews and stuff like that I was still doing. So I've used Sony Alpha cameras the whole time, and only of late have I gone back to a Cine camera as well. So because of some of the advantages of that I wanted. So yeah, so that's kind of taken me up to current day, and I kind of delved into fashion, I guess, was the other thing. I kind of went from the commercial shoots I was doing and the corporate type work I was doing like the NHS and some other big clients, but I started doing some fashion work and really enjoyed the creativity behind it and the freedom and the travel. And yeah, just went more so with that, based the show reels more towards that. And yeah, it's just rolled from there, really. So clients, I suppose, have obviously, like we've been doing bits with yourselves with Sony and Zeiss, we do endorsements with, and then we've done like travel stuff with like Condé Nast. We've done like Adidas, Foot Locker, Foot Asylum, JD Sports. Yeah, just a wide range of stuff, really. Men's fashion sites, Highsnobiety and stuff. So yeah, really
awesome
stuff.
Look, we've had some great comments come through as well. I've got for some reason my comments aren't coming up on my screen, so I'm kind of looking across two screens here. So Marcy Mo says, John Edwards, this footage was pretty insane. I mean, I was going to say earlier, cool footage, love the way you've graded it, profiled it, etc. Thanks Marcy for that.
Yeah.
In regard to the reel, I mean, obviously you're going to be using a variety of kit. Two questions. What's in your kit bag now? Obviously, the A7S III. And what kind of other kit are you using alongside, shooting reels like that? Yeah,
so currently, I've got the cameras here. So obviously the new camera itself, so the A7S III. And that at the moment's got a 40mm lens on it. And I've literally just cleaned these cameras off a shoot last night. We were out until 20 to 2 in the morning at a container yard in Manchester shooting. So these were covered in mud and all sorts. of hanging off the back of a motorbike, chasing a model. And and then this is the larger handheld camera, I guess. So obviously it's got XLR input, so we use that more for the audio stuff. Larger screen. But yeah, so to be honest though, most of the time the Alpha camera is the A cam and the larger camera is kind of just the handheld B cam elements. So the Alphas do the bulk of our work really for the reel. So the reel I'd say would be 90% Alpha, 10% FS 5.2. So
And what was the model? Sorry, I missed you. You had the
Oh yeah,
FS or
so the reel itself was mainly shot on the A7 III. Was
okay.
the camera for say the last 2 years as like the gimbal camera and yeah the workhorse for that kind of stuff, and then the larger camera yeah for the handheld and like the blurry shaky elements and stuff like that. Just obviously because of rolling shutter and stuff that you get with the mirrorless cameras. So we've moved
Well,
to the cinema camera for that.
we'll come on to that later because obviously that's been a massive improvement on the S3
Yes, yeah,
compared to the
yeah,
S2
yeah. It's definitely
with the new
something to talk
processor
about,
and
yeah.
so on, which is great. So we'll come on to that in a sec with your, your again, this is your experience of using the camera in the field.
Yeah.
I haven't got one here. You've obviously got one, so we should have done this the other way around. But I'm just going to cut to some pre-recorded footage that we had with
Yes.
when I had the camera, and let's get your opinion on from the outside the ergonomics. What's your opinion on that? So I'm just going to unmute myself while I do this, and we'll just unmute Jon as well. There we go. So, Jon, what's your opinion on the camera?
Yeah, the record button now is in a much better position. It's one of those things, I've used the others so much and I'm so used to them, but that instantly struck me as a new, really good feature. It's on the top, it's where you'd normally take a photo, it's right next to it, so it's nice and easy to access on a gimbal. That's really good. Obviously the twin card slot is really good now, and the way that works, and you can operate on the higher rate cards and the normal rate cards, and it will switch between the two depending on what you're shooting, so it will just read that. The new screen, I know a lot of people wanted the screen.
The flip out screen.
Yeah. So I've felt like a bit mixture with that at the moment. From putting on a gimbal, I like to tilt the screen, and I can't do that at the moment. But then I'm also going to swap gimbals at the moment to the new Ronin RS2, I think it is. So the actual flip out screen will be better on that. So that makes sense in the long run. I just think they've really kind of fine-tuned it now. That even the grip is bigger in hand and chunkier, so it feels just more upmarket. Also, I noticed with the weights, I put the camera on the gimbal, and the gimbal was set still to the older A7 III, and I thought, I'm going to have to completely rebalance this because it's a bigger unit and it's going to be heavier. But it was really not far off it at all with the same lens on. So I think it was literally just a shift back to front to back on the actual gimbal to get it to balance. So if anyone's swapping any other alpha cameras, don't remove all your gimbal balance settings before you put the new body on. It might actually be pretty close.
That's good. Good tip. What about battery life? I know that obviously it's got the same battery as you find in the A7 III, A9 II, and so on. Obviously using the there goes my front doorbell. There we go. I was going to say we're live here. Just let that go in the background. So you're looking at pretty much double the capacity. How did you feel using it?
Because obviously we used to be on the A7S II batteries, which would drain super quick. So you'd have lots of those, and I bought some third-party ones that all right, they weren't terrible, but they weren't great. You couldn't really. They're amazing, and like say even last night, I think we started at about 6 p.m. we shot until 20 to 2, and I didn't change the battery in the camera. It was still about, hang on, actually if I turn it on, it'll tell me what's left on it.
Nice one.
It's at 21% still, and that camera all night shot 4K 10-bit 422 in S-Log 3, so it was pushing the camera a fair amount as well. And it was perfect. So really, I'd recommend having two batteries. If you're shooting commercially, just so you've got a backup. But essentially, you can do an 8 to 12 hour shoot easy on one battery. So no problems at all, which is fantastic.
For those of you that haven't obviously seen the camera or not familiar, say with the A7R4, the A9 Mark II, then the ergonomics of the camera is pretty much the same. So the buttons are more prominent on there. The grip's a little bit bigger. Obviously, with this camera, you've got the addition of the full HDMI cable as well. I mean, I'm normally used to micro HDMI. Talking to filmmakers and people in the industry, I think is the full HDMI preferred in your line of work, over a micro?
So. Yeah, really, with the external, say if you're having a field monitor on a gimbal and stuff, it's much easier to go, pure HDMI to HDMI. I think, it's really good.
Cool. We've got a question.
All the improvements that...
Oh, sorry, Jon.
Yeah, sorry, Mark. No, that's fine.
We got a question. I need to look at Zlatko. Zlativ. You have to try the A7S III with a Ninja 5 from Atomos. ProRes RAW is the next level. Zlatko, we're gonna talk about that later. Although Jon hasn't had full experience of it, I think we're going to be looking at doing some work on that as well. So we will come on to that a bit later as well. Okay. So pretty good improvement then over the A7S Mark II.
Yes, yeah, definitely, and that ended up quite interesting, really. So I flipped to Alpha cameras to purchase the camera, so I got rid of my A7R III, which I was a bit reluctant to because I love taking stills on that camera. And then that was more my stills camera, I guess. And then I had the A7 III as the workhorse for the video work. So I traded both those in to get the A7S III. So I purchased the camera myself. You know, there's no direct deal with Sony. It was just something I use Sony. I won the award, but since then, obviously, I've done a couple of events with yourself. But you know, there's no kind of direct contact like that. So, but I really wanted the camera. So yeah, so I swapped those two, got hold of it, and so we've done maybe 2 weeks of shooting on it now. So we've done a 3-day shoot, and I shot that strangely in some of it in HD because I got the wrong cards, which was my own stupidity. And then since then we've shot 4K at 24 frames and 60, and we've got some examples of that. And and then also I guess going back to what you said, Mark, that we kind of cross-compared a A7S II, which a friend used for the BTS video that we've got. So that's kind of like a nice mixture, really, that it's shot on the A7S II, me wandering around with the camera, and then the shots of me with the camera out of it are obviously the 3. So it was interesting to grade across the two and see, you know, how the color science has changed, the quality, and also even how the computer dealt with it, and how Final Cut dealt with the footage, across the board.
Well, look, you've mentioned the reel. It's a very short reel. Well, let's have a look at it now. We do have a question here. We got a sent in question which is up on the screen now, so we'll come back to that into a second. We have had some other questions as well, so we'll come back to those. Let's play the reel. So this is a behind the scenes type of reel. This is Naive Studios and Jon Edwards. So we'll just press play this now and come back to you, Jon.
Yeah,
that's pretty impressive, mate. Again, talk us through that. Your approach, a very similar kind of look to the reel as well. Maybe talk about a little bit more about workflow, but also what were the settings? What footage did you get out of the S3? Yeah, please.
Yeah. So firstly, thanks to Dan Farrow, was the guy who shot the BTS for us, and Dan kind of works with us on various projects behind the scenes, does some stills and all the rest of it. And then Dan obtained a A7S II because I'd sold the 2 cameras I'd got at the time for the new camera, so we were in an awkward position that we needed a camera to shoot the BTS. So he obtained that off a friend, and then I set the camera up for him because he's not really a Sony user. And he said he was very impressed with it, which was really cool. So I put it in S-Log3, which I know a lot of people wouldn't shoot on an A7 II, but we always have done, like all the reels, and we get a lot of nice comments back, people asking if it's shot on ARRI and stuff, but it's always been shot in Sony and S-Log3, just because I got trained on it in Pinewood, so I kind of knew more so how to handle S-Log and not worry about the noise out of it, or people thinking it looks like noise just because it's flat, with the grey shadow details. So all that was shot S-Log3. It was a bit of a last-minute thing, really, obviously for this tour, because we planned to do a behind-the-scenes commercial shoot. But typical with the commercial work, obviously the client kind of comes first, and they pushed it back a week. So there was no way we were going to be able to shoot that and deliver it for this talk as such. That was the shoot that went on last night late. So I grabbed Dan, and instead we went out and ventured to the countryside. I think I end up looking like a travel photographer or explorer in that a little bit. It's not really what we normally do, but it was more a case of just shooting some B-roll and testing it out and having some fun. Um, it rained on us the whole time, of course, and we're kind of on lockdown, so we had to be careful where we were going. Obviously, it was work related, so we weren't breaking any rules, but obviously, to go anywhere that's kind of touristy or nice at the moment, or somewhere you'd like to visit, looks like you're kind of breaking rules. So, luckily, we saw someone who worked there. It's kind of like within, like, it's not a national park, but it's like a famous like reservoir and lake. We saw some staff that were cutting some trees, and they were fine with it. So we parked up in the car park and just set about shooting. So we got rained on the whole time, so that tested the weather sealing and capabilities of the new camera. And it was really good. It was like fine drizzle, so like you just got absolutely soaked in it. But it worked really well. I just shot handheld, obviously, because the gimbal's got lots of exposed wires, so it kind of didn't go to plan of what we were going to do. We were going to go up to a waterfall further back in the valley and shoot more slow motion. But it was a very overcast day and very little light, so instead I decided I'd kind of shoot like landscape wides on the A7S III, and then I kind of just helped direct Dan shoot the normal kind of style work we would, on cut angle to angle on. Well, what about if I walk through here, we cut this tree, and then we walk this way, and so on. So we just pieced it together really. So we probably spent about 3 or 4 hours out in the rain. It was good fun.
So some key messages there. So weather resistance, obviously,
Yes,
out in the field. Well, you've got an element of low light in there. So
yeah,
detailed noise.
Pushed a little bit for what we needed, and it was absolutely fine. Yeah, shooting the 4K 120 frames on it. Oh yeah, all those clips are 120 frames just because it was handheld. So to smooth that up. They ended up looking like tripod shots because obviously with the inbuilt stabilization so good now, it just looked like when I got home and looked at it, I thought, oh, it'll have a nice kind of flexible, handheld look, and it's really good. It almost looked like it had been tripoded each shot, really. So
and so comparing it to the A7S II, you can
Yes.
see those big differences between the two models.
Massively, definitely, yeah. And again, we even I got Dan to drive my car for a little bit when we were driving alongside the lake, and I just shot out the car window, like pointing the camera out of the window up in 120 frames and out the front window. And again, it looks like we've rigged it up on something, whether we've had a sucker mount on the front of the car or a tripod inside. Really smooth, yeah. You could use rather than just snippets normally of footage, you get a freak moment where the road's smooth and you've held it well. Now you're getting mass flexibility without a gimbal even.
Jon, I'm just going to go back to a question from Axel, just in case Axel thinks we've ignored it. It's very much saying, he's comparing it with another camera, but he's saying he says it's a YouTube camera, but it's hard for pro work. Would you agree with that?
Sorry, what was the question?
So he's basically saying it says that the A7S III can be used as a YouTube camera, but it's hard for pro work. So my guess for that question is it's not suitable for pro work. I mean, do you agree with that?
Oh no, I definitely think it's amazing. So even going back to the A7 III, we did 2 primetime TV commercials on that camera. And I know, again, really, Clearcast wouldn't necessarily advise you to do that on a £2,000 body camera, from when that was released at the time. But it looked fantastic on the spots on TV, like no problem at all. So obviously the A7S III being kind of Sony's alpha, almost like cine line in a way as far as the alphas go, it's a fantastic. And I've heard people use it a lot as a B cam in movies, on commercials, and I think all our work will be shot on that up to high client level. Like there's no problem. There'd be no reason that I'd pick up the FS5 II over the S3 on quality. There's no problem at all with it if used right,
thanks.
obviously. But yeah.
Well, hopefully, Axel, that answers your question. There are lots and lots of questions. We'll come through that. I want to come back to the one that we had up earlier. This is through Wex earlier this week. So how's the 10-bit 42 codec compared to previous XAVC codecs, obviously on the previous model and other models? And has the flexibility offered by higher bitrate enhanced your creativity in post? I think you've answered some of these, but if we can answer that question, that'd be great.
No, it's definitely something I'd like to talk about, because I feel like that's one thing with the camera that a lot of companies at the moment have gone to 8K, 12K, done all these kind of crazy, amazing, I guess, in some aspects. But for me personally, I don't need to go anywhere near any of those things, because most of our work is for, say, Vimeo, YouTube for clients for their channels, or social content as well. And there's no need, most people haven't even got a screen over 4 or 5K So we just don't need those things. So it's really nice that Sony stuck to that and really kind of mastered the camera. I think like everything you wanted in this camera now is there. And then the codec is amazing. I guess if you haven't touched one, I'd best describe it as it would be like using the A7 III in 4K at regular frame rate. The kind of the color science and the look that you're getting out of it is fantastic. But obviously, again, it's 10-bit, not 8, so it's gone beyond again. So, in fact, we've got another example, which is the Advocates fire scene stuff, Mark, and that shot at 4K 10-bit 422, and we literally lit that scene with a bonfire, and that was it. And the light dropped. The guys who were lighting the fire had a technical issue; they couldn't light the fire. So we initially wanted to kind of shoot it. Myself and the photographer that I worked with, Jake, we wanted to shoot it kind of whilst the light was still dropping rather than disappeared. But by the time we actually got the bonfire ablaze, it had dropped completely and it was pitch black pretty much. So that was a real good test of the camera, and I didn't even have to drop the ISO, bump the ISO that high. And yeah, the footage, I was really, really impressed. It looks fantastic, I think, personally. It looks like a cine camera, like really, really good.
John, I've lost my main feed on the camera, so apologies for those that are seeing me go back and forth there. So people can still see me. I'm using the cam now off the Mac, so we're going to obviously continue. I'll worry about that later. So we won't be able to do a split screen at the moment, so we'll just flick through between the two. But what I will do, let's come on to the Advocates film. And let's have a look afterwards about talk us through the settings, etc. And let's play that now, and let's see give that to the audience. So let's have a look. So clearly, John, on that one, low light, some incredible detail there. And could you just again, how your opinion again of the files that are coming out of the A7S III when it comes to the low light performance? Because of course, we've seen a dramatic improvement, or previous models, but A7S III. What's your feedback on that?
Yeah. So I don't think we took the ISO on that above even 3200. We didn't even really have to push it. It just worked really well with the fire. So I expected a clean image with it being 4K and 10-bit. And even with the grade, I've managed to keep the grade. Normally, obviously, if you're pushing the ISO and it's getting a little bit noisy, you'd take the black down, further to hide that noise. And that's not the case with this at all. Really, we could have bumped it a couple of stops in post up, if anything, and there was mass flexibility in it. Obviously, I wanted to make it I wanted it a bit like The Revenant or something, and quite moody and kind of shot natural light and as dark as it was for us and the guys in the scene. So we left it as was. But yeah, really, I mean, I could have, if the client had moaned, and said, "Oh, do you know what? I want it bright. I want to see more of the garments or something." It could have gone that way if it needed to be. So it's nice to have that flex, just in case. But the camera worked really well. Again, in that it was quite intense. It was a lot by the fire. It got really warm, and no issues with the camera at all with that, because it was kind of pushed. That it was getting quite close to the fire and stuff. And we shot on Brighton Beach with it as well. And then again, that was drizzle and rain and pretty horrible conditions early in the morning. It brightened up after, but again, no problems for the camera at all, and worked well throughout. So I think the new codecs and the 4K and the 10-bit, it's super good, and it's just it's a pleasure to color grade really, because you kind of really getting what you want out of it. And I feel like more than ever, I guess everyone's chasing the look of like an Arri Mini or something along those lines, and I really think it's similar. Like I've had comments back before, saying, "Oh, is this on an Arri, or what have you shot this on, or that's not an S-Log3?" It's just people kind of adding in comments or critiquing stuff. But yeah, we've always shot in S-Log3, and obviously now it's really working really well. I'm kind of seeing and getting what I want out of the camera.
John, we've got more questions to go back to. So you kind of have answered this one that was pre sent in by the WEX team earlier this week.
Okay.
So we've got to go right back. Question Onka says, how did it compare to Nikon D780? And the other question is around mirrorless. Seems to be much more expensive. Again, we haven't got the time to go through pricing and stuff like that, but I think you probably saw on the screen here, certainly in the UK and Ireland, we have money off lenses, and do talk to your retailers as well. I mean, at the moment in the UK, obviously we've gone into lockdown, but pick up the phone, speak to the stores, speak to the customer service team, especially at WEX as well, and they're there to help you if you're looking to buy the lenses if they are expensive or not in the price range you're looking for. So apologies, I can't answer. But I mean, let's not make it model specific, but well, let's answer the question. So obviously this customer's got a Nikon D780 comparison.
Yes. Yeah, so I used to use a lot of Nikon kit when I was still working as a graphic designer. I worked as a medical photographer as well at the same time, and the guys in the hospital had Nikon gear, so like all the lenses, all the camera bodies, and they were great. There was no problem with them, but obviously they were at the time just DSLRs, and so for the video work, you'd always notice that you couldn't really kind of swing the camera around too much because of the dramatic roll and shutter you'd have on them. So we'd always have to tripod a lot of stuff and pan and tilt. It was a bit more limited, at the time then as well. We didn't really have gimbals, so it really restricted us to tripods, and that's when I think I first had the A7 II, and I took that into work a little bit, started using it there just because it was better, because it was mirrorless, and you were getting less roll and shutter. And then up to these now, like the roll and shutter on them is amazing. You can shoot handheld. It kind of voids the reason for me to pick up the FS5 too, really. On the, it'll work just as well. But yeah, no problem with the Nikon cameras. I'm not, that's not to knock them, but I just feel like Sony's really run away with the game now on the video side of things, where they've taken it seriously and really listened to the consumer and give us back what we wanted. Like, I've heard loads of problems at the moment with the Canon gear, with the new camera overheating and stuff. And obviously, for me on a commercial level, I just, as much as the image might look beautiful, like, you just couldn't use that on set. If it overheats and you can't work, then you've ruined the shoot. So yeah.
Well, again, we're not here to talk about that, but
not to nitpick cameras, no. But yeah, I just feel this camera, they've really kind of taken everyone's opinion or what people have said that they wanted out of the camera, and it's really worked. So it's great that they haven't kind of tried to over-spec it, because I've heard people go, oh, it hasn't got 8K or it hasn't got this feature or that, but I just think it's given everything and more that you ever wanted from it, and it works better than you thought it would. Like, the image out of it is fantastic. So
that's good to hear. So hopefully that answers that question.
Yeah.
There's so many, John. Apologies if I miss your question here, but
sorry, I'll try
if you
as we go through.
If you Adam Rowland says, if you're shooting 120 frames per second,
yes.
what is your edit frame rate?
Oh, my edit frame rate normally is 24 frames a second for the fashion work. So I just it ends up at 20% speed, really. Obviously, you've got flexibility to make it 40% or so on and so on. But I kind of like the 20% speed for gracefulness and, to capture garment details and stuff for the brands. So, yeah.
Cool. We also talked about hardware, didn't we? With obviously new cameras like this and other manufacturers bringing huge amounts of data in. I've got a question here from Sonic.
Oh yeah.
Cool name. 10-bit codecs fill your hard drives rapidly. I did a casual shoot over by Niagara Falls a few weeks back and came back with 100 gig of footage. Yikes. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Quite a lot there.
Yeah.
I've done that the same, actually. We did talk about this, didn't we, about hardware, how important that is to obviously make sure you've got something that can complement it. It's including cards as well. So what's your feedback on that?
Yeah, so say I actually looked just this morning. I was still at the hotel from where we stayed last night after the shoot, and I had a look. I backed up the cards before I left onto a drive, and I had a look on a 64 gig card shooting 10-bit 4K, just normal speed, 24 frames. That ended up at about 32 gig shot over about an 8-hour period last night. So I was really happy with that. I didn't think that was a crazy amount. A single card without any switch up. Obviously, no, we didn't shoot slow motion because we were shooting at night. with lights, and there was lots of setups, and obviously there was photography alongside it. So we weren't going to light it up for loads of like slow motion elements. But yeah, so card wise, I did want to bring that up, and me and Mark had spoke about that. So at the moment, I'm using these Sony Tough cards. And there's a bit of a reason behind that. I bought some SanDisk cards. I've used SanDisk a lot. I thought they were a premium company for cards, and they are. But currently, they don't run any cards in the SDXC format that meet the spec of the Sony in 120 frames. So I bought 2 cards, and it was about £200 worth of cards, and they didn't work, which was my own stupidity because I hadn't looked into it properly. So anyway, since then I've swapped the cards with the camera shop. They're very nice, and I've got these Sony Tough cards instead, and they work great. The only thing I'd say is I bought 132 as a backup that I wasn't really going to use. It was going to sit in the bag. But what I realized was, because these cards are SDXC, they've got to be that to shoot the 120 frames in 4K. And if you buy a 32 or less on size of card, they end up as an SDHC. So a 32-bit card won't let you shoot the high spec. So just to know, if you're going to buy a card and you want to shoot 4K slow-mo, go 64 gig or up on the card.
John, I've just brought up some file formats and some bit rates as well from some of the spec slides we've got. So if you're watching this now, so we got 4K XAVC S 120 frames. 4210 bits, so 280 megabits per second. So again, there's lots of information around this on websites like Wex's website for the product page as well. So just make sure obviously you're aware of the CF Express cards Type A and obviously the other capacity of SD cards as well. Okay, so let's go back. There's some more questions, John. So we'll keep going with these because there's some good questions here. Chris Ashkettle, I'm shooting my stuff in the 420 I think that's 8-bit in 24p 60, so 2460. It looks really good, runs okay in Premiere. I find the 422 really clunky. Am I missing much quality? Wise doing this?
So also we've got a video to show that was shot on Brighton Beach, and because I cropped up my car to the brand, I managed to shoot, obviously the fire scenes was for the same company, so the fire scenes were shot in normal speed 4K in 10-bit because I tested that on the camera. I knew that'd be okay to run with on the cards I already had, but we shot all the slow motion fashion work as I would have done on the A7S III. So I shot that at 8-bit 120 frames a second, and then conform that back to 24 frames a second. So that was just HD 8-bit. But I did notice, to go back to that the color science in it was much nicer than the A7S III. So there is already a massive benefit from the camera, even just shooting normal grade of what was available previously on an Alpha. But yeah, if you can go to 10-bit, fantastic. And I've literally just had to I bought a new iMac and up the RAM in it, and obviously I've invested in the cards as well because I wanted to get the most out of the camera and see better results. But I was saying this to Mark actually in advance, that obviously tech changes and things need to move forward. And to be fair, I looked at my MacBook and it was actually 3 or 4 years old, so it was dropping frames a little on the higher quality. So I've done bits of editing with it and tested it, and it looks great. But I just thought, working commercially in this day to day, I'm going to have to shell out some money and get up to speed on hardware. So I've done that, and then that's why now I thought, maybe the next thing is I'll shoot some RAW and try that, because hopefully now the machine will play ball with that. But obviously it's always costly to do these things. So
should we have a look at the Brighton footage? I mean, it's only a few seconds on. So
HD footage, yeah.
So this is HD footage that you shot on the A7S Mark III. Just a couple of seconds. So some really good detail in there, John. I mean,
Yeah.
again, when I say even at HD, I mean, it surprisingly looks, really, really, a
Yeah.
lot sharper than I would expect. Especially again where we're streaming this, the quality looks excellent.
Yeah, yeah, and obviously like that footage, it was like shot over 3 days. So we started at Brighton on the beach and shot those scenes with the two models. There's meant to be kind of like a fight scene. It's meant to be mods versus rockers, which is famous at Brighton Beach. And then from there, there's some scenes with a bathroom, a low lit scene. There's some scenes in a bathtub, and then it goes on to the woods at the end where they're burning the deck chairs, which I think is like a nod to, I think the police burnt a lot of the deck chairs after the riots or whatever on the beach. But so there's little nods to the historic event itself. But for us, obviously, yeah. So the low light at night was a good test in 4K. The HD stuff on the beach, and those will all be combined in the same timeline. And to me personally, I can see the difference. I know that the low light stuff's better, and that's why I switched the format up for that. But for the beach stuff in the morning, I felt like I was pushing the camera a little bit early on because it was like blue hour and we were trying to shoot slow-mo, which is what I wanted. And we did it. The ISO was up a little. But yeah, it looks clean, looks really nice, and yeah, no problem. I also noticed with it, even just I'd have like an external audio recorder like Rode mics or something, but it was so rainy and drizzly that I didn't really want to bring that equipment out at the time, and thought, oh, I'll shoot some kind of B-roll afterwards and obtain the ambient noises. And but I found that the mic in the camera is really good. So like the guy lighting the cigarette in front of the fire, that's taken directly out of the video, off the camera itself, not off an external mic. And him throwing the deck chair on the fire, and you can hear it clunk, and you can hear the fire. That is out of the video. So I'm finding the internal audio recording is pretty good. It's all right, it's usable. Where for a long time it's been very questionable, or you're retracing your steps or trying to find something online to cover it off. But yeah, it was good.
John, again, there's a lot of questions here that I don't think we're going to get a chance to go through.
Okay.
So I'll say to the team at Wex, if you can get any details of questions we haven't answered, then I'd be more than willing to work with John on this in the next week or so to try and get back to them.
Yeah. Or if anyone wants to post it on the YouTube, and I can log in and answer those on there. I'm cool to do that. That's.
Well, that brings to this down here. So I was going to say, how can more people obviously find out more about your work and contact you as well? Yeah.
Please feel free to do so. I love chatting about gear, and when people shooting stuff, it's always interesting to hear what other people are doing.
So I think this is your handle for Instagram, Twitter, website as well.
Yeah, so the website naivestudio.co.uk, and then our handle for Twitter and for Instagram is naive_studio.
Fantastic.
Facebook,
so
we don't really run that so much.
So we're just going to bring up a little bit of specs. So just if there's anything else in here that we kind of haven't covered. So we've kind of covered obviously sensor quality, detail, the fact that first time in our range that we've been able to shoot 4K 60, 120, and full HD 240, and 10-bit internal. As we know, there's a lot of cameras out there in the market that do that.
Dynamic range as well for the fire scenes. There's just there was a little bit of light left in the sky when we shot the fire, and it held. Looked really, really nice without any ND filters or anything. So yeah, real good depth of image in it.
John, in regards to the autofocus, I mean, I've seen a massive improvement, obviously, in the A7S II. Yeah. It's in comparison with the A7R IV and obviously the A9 and the A7 III have quite a wider range, but not that much more. I mean, I have to, eye autofocus in video, fantastic. There's a question here actually about eye autofocus animal. It's not on video mode. I have no idea if there will be a future firmware. The best thing there is to look at our website and any social media if we do announce something like that. But
we definitely
it's for humans in video.
We some of the scenes on Brighton Beach, there's a wide of one of the models walking, and he's really small in the shot, purposely just to show all the landscape. And I'm walking across, obviously, like the Pebble Beach, which is kind of awkward anyway. And he's really far away, and it picked up his face absolutely perfect from a long way off. I didn't even change the lens. I think I was on a 40mm, so I was about 20 foot away from him, and it picked him up so well. And I kind of then, because I was walking so clumbersome, I just pointed the camera and kept the camera that I knew it was like directly on him and framed him as I wanted. But I normally I'd be trying to check the focus the whole time. but I just walked it, and we did it like 3 times to double check that it was going to be right and usable. But all 3 clips are just spot on. You know, where you start
That's
to,
good.
I've never used autofocus that much. I've normally used manual cine
Yeah.
lenses
Yeah.
by trade, but I am definitely now kind of at a point where I'm quite confident with it, and it's opened a new world up to me of if you're not shooting manually and you haven't got a focus puller, for say tracking a vehicle. We did some stuff with Mercedes in Australia, and we tracked like a vehicle from Mercedes there out of another car, and it was spot on throughout, and that was only on the A7 III. So obviously this has moved on another level yet again, and yeah, it's really good. Again, last night in the low light, having the models walking, there was some silhouetted style shots of them, so you know it's hard to pick up focus, but the camera did great. I had no problem with it at all. Normally I'm turning on a light just to get a focus and then turning the light off to keep that for them to say walk from the dark into the light, but the camera now
Yes.
it's fantastic. It can just focus in the dark, basically. It's really, really good.
We didn't talk about the viewfinder, but I mean, when I first saw the viewfinder, I was pretty impressed with the field of view and the resolution, the sharpness. Again, do you use the viewfinder that much when filming, or are you using anything external with that, or the back of the screen?
Yeah, so currently, a lot of the time, especially being on a gimbal, the back of the screen, do use, we've got like a small HD field monitor that we use, but a lot of the time I'm finding I'm putting that on the older screen on the FS5. I'm so used to the alpha screens and I like them that I'm fine with the focus. And obviously the other thing is the focus assist where it jumps in. And with the beacon turned on, you know that you're sharp. And even more so now with the autofocus, you don't even have to worry about that anymore. You know, it locks on and you think, well, it's good to go. It will track. I think we did one shot. Where was that? That was on the new camera, and that was down in London. And it was a guy walking through a car park, and I wanted to be the other side of the pillars. You know, you see a lot in movies. So he's walking one side of the pillar, and I'm walking the other. So it's kind of cutting the shot. And
Yes.
it just tracked him right through. You know, so like it just ignored the pillar. He'd disappear, he'd reappear, and he'd be sharp. It was really good.
Obviously, you use a third party as well as Sony lenses.
Yes.
For those of you not aware, we have 57 native lenses in the range as well to choose from. I know that Jon obviously uses a mixture, and I think that just shows the diversity of the other third-party manufacturers are looking into the system as well. So as well as the Sony system, which obviously we highly recommend that you use the native glass on a native system to get the best technology. There are obviously other ways of coming into the system, and we use the one-mount strategy. So of course, if you got an APS-C camera like you started out with a full-frame camera as well as ProCam, you've kind of got the solution to have the whole one mount for the whole system without an adapter. But again, if there are DSLR users looking to come across, then there are obviously third-party adapters to bring that across. But of course, the native side is really important, as it is for Sony, as it is for other manufacturers as well. Right, I'm going to go to one last question, Jon, because we are like about 10-15 minutes over what we planned, which is great because there's a lot of questions here. Let me just see. In fact, I think we've got I think Wex are going to pick up the questions, which is great. So thanks to the Wex team for doing that. Like I said, we had we had about 4 or 5 other pre-recorded, pre-set questions sent in by the Wex team as well. So we're going to run out of time, unfortunately. Jon, is there anything else you just want to say about the A7S III before we kind of just wrap up?
Buy one. No. It's amazing. I'm really, really impressed with it. I'm glad I swapped. I've swapped 2 cameras for it essentially that were in the alpha range that I had no problem with either of them. The R3 was fantastic, and I used it more for stills and time lapses. And in all honesty, I traded that in first as a deposit, and then I got rid of my A7 III when I picked up the camera. And I actually left the camera in the store about a week or 2 weeks when it arrived. But I had to, just because of my commercial commitments. So the store kept ringing me up saying, "Hey, Mr. Edwards, your camera's here." And I was like, yeah, I really want to get my hands on it. But I daren't because I'm booked and I've got to do things. So now I've got it. It's so good. And I was really gutted, in all honesty, of getting rid of the A7 III because I had no issue with it. But definitely this camera is just kind of taking it way beyond that. And I'm getting so much more out of it that I want. And I'm now excited to just set up all this hardware and that I can edit these high rates as streamlined as they did previously. So yeah, exciting, really.
Oh, thank you, John. And again, John's words. John is taking his time to talk to us here through the Wex channel about his work. So John has not been sent any kit or anything like that. This is John's equipment that he's gone out and bought himself, and that's why we wanted to share with you somebody that's working in the industry with an insight to the A7S III. I'm going to finish off. Thank you, John. Please stay with us after the webinar finishes. I'll just catch up with you. But if you're not aware, big sign behind me. It's the cashback. We've got up to £300 on selected cameras and lenses. Terms and conditions apply, obviously, up until the end of January next year, 2021. And here's the link for those of you that have waited this long. Thank you ever so much. This will allow you to have 10% off a selective list of Sony products that Wex and ourselves have put together for you. You have to register via this URL link, and you will be entitled then to a limited time scale 10% off certain products. So hopefully at this time of the year, with the seasonality kicking in, and obviously a lot of us are locked down, those extra pounds might help. I'm not going to look at the questions because there seems to be more coming up, but thank you ever so much, John. Thank you to all the audience for staying in. It looks like we had a good audience all the way through, so thanks again. Apologies, we can't answer everything, but thanks again. Have a great what I was going to say as well, if you are interested in more Sony webinars that we're doing, please look at the events page on Wex events channel on their website. I think they've put the link up there for future. We've got a lot more coming up in the next few weeks into December as well. And also visit the next screen, which will have our events site on Sony Alpha Universe as well. But thank you for your time, and we'll see you again soon.